Live this morning. Sitting in studio with me is Mr. Anselm Richardson, a Chief Technical Advisor to the Division of Finance, Trade and Economy. Mr. Richardson, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Tobago, wherever in the world you are.
And we're getting right into our interview, and I want us to look at crime because, of course, we are up to murder 9 in Tobago, and I mean, for Tobago, that is very alarming.
Very alarming.
I mean, there have been years in the past, if you had one murder, that was one too many. Exactly. But we are in the month of May, and our statistics are revealing we are at 9 murders.
Yeah.
You know, quite sad, of course. And we had a senior superintendent on yesterday morning with Chanel, and they addressed the issue of crime as well because it's quite relevant. It's in front of us. And this morning, I want to take a different approach because we know we have the police force and we always will criticize them. But what I want us to look at us being responsible citizens. How do we get involved in crime fighting? And of course, get involved in terms of being safe and making sure we too keep the law as we pursue this.
Right. So that's a very important approach to crime and crime control, which is really the social control approach to crime, where we have to mobilize and organize and empower communities to participate and really take responsibility for the safety of the community, working in collaboration and in conjunction with the law enforcement community, co-creating solutions and strategy for the safety of the community. So that's very important. And I think that is one of the variables or the key variable that has been missing from our approach to crime control in Trinidad and Tobago and probably across the region. So one of the things that we have to do in Tobago, we have to really create the environment that will promote and protect collective action, a collective social action from the community in terms of their fight against crime.
But who fosters that though?
Well, it has to be the community with the state providing the resources and creating that enabling environment. What we have to do, we have to build the social efficacy of the community, organizing them, creating the social systems and pathway for the efficient relationship between the community and the police. We have to set up mechanism where, or even empowering the community to the point and explaining to the community and demonstrating to them in a real sense that illegal firearms in Tobago, wherever it is a threat to every Tobagoan and everywhere. Because the way the situation is fluid, these violent acts are not confined or restricted to any locality or any community. It's a very fluid situation and it happens anywhere. And you don't necessarily have to be part of the game to be a collateral of the game.
That's right.
And therefore, once we come to that place, recognizing that illegal firearms and ammunition is a threat to all of us, then we have to come to that mental place in our minds and be decisively prepared to give up anyone who we know have an illegal firearm to law enforcement.
But many of us, and when I say us, I mean those of us who reside here, even in Trinidad, you know, many of us, and please, nobody come looking for me when I'm talking very general, I know nothing, you know, many of us protect those that are involved in this because that's somebody's son, that's my cousin, that's my nephew, that's the man up the road, you know, that kind of, because we live in these close-knit societies.
Exactly.
And how do we really get us to change that mindset that we cannot continue to protect these people? Because as you rightfully said, any one of us can be caught in the crossfire. And we're talking about what seems to be an increased accessibility to firearms.
Definitely. Because you see, even in your home where you know your son or your daughter or your relative had an illegal firearm, that poses a threat to your safety, the safety of other members of the family. Because he may leave that firearm carelessly in the house, one of the children picks it up, bam, you have an accidental discharge, you have a fatality. So the illegal firearms are lethal threat, moving lethal threat to every single Tobagoan. And we have to come to that mental place where we are prepared as Tobagoans without giving consideration to who the individual is. Once we are aware that that individual has an illegal firearm, we have to be mentally prepared and socially divined to give that person up to law enforcement.
Right.
Because to do otherwise is to really be prepared to pay the protection costs for that person with the lives and blood of our brothers and sisters.
But sometimes the persons who have these illegal firearms, Mr. Richards, are the breadwinners. So I'm not going to sell my son out. I'm not going to sell my daughter out because they are the ones who are taking care of the family.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate and that might be a rational consideration. But you also have to extend that to the point that that person, based on what he is doing, that requires him or her to be in possession of an illegal firearm, brings a certain risk to you and your family.
Right.
That may be lethal and fatal.
Right.
And therefore you have to make the calculation. Do you want to eat and die anytime? Or do you want to eliminate that risk and eat little and live long? So those are the real those are the real consideration that has to be given to the situation.
Right.
And unless we come to that place where we can really deploy collective action. This is a call to action, collective action. Meaning that all of us have to come to that place to make these decisions and to work with law enforcement to get rid of the firearms and ammunition on our streets and in our villages that are causing the blood and lives of our brothers and sisters to go down the drain.
Right.
It's not a healthy situation. It runs against the very nature of our being as Tobagonians. The things that define us as Tobagonians are our caring, loving, peaceful way of life that have defined and promote our annual harvest festival, where you can go from house to house in any village annually and be entertained with food and beverages without being even asked your name, who is your relative, what religion you are, what political party you support.
Right.
And this emerging culture of gun violence is a clear and present danger to our way of life. And it's either we want to normalize gun violence in this small island, or we want to defeat it.
But I think we know we have to do something. But who is going to rise to the challenge to bring us? Because we are a people, we need mobilizing. So we know these are the things we should be doing or we have to do. And I hear you when you say, we need to do this. But I'm trying to figure out who brings us to this point. So we have TTPS who would have town meetings and, you hear the great plans and what they will do and what they have done. And you hear members of the community explaining what some challenges are. And out of these, you do see some resolution to some of the issues. But a lot of things are still not very visible to us. So I guess that's why sometimes you have that kind of disconnect between TTPS and communities, because the communities are always crying out for more. And I can tell you, even in my community, I don't see any police doing any kind of parole, passing by. At one point, you saw them patrolling, right? And that kind of thing. And you don't see it. You don't. So there's this kind of absence, and I know they can only do so much. Many of you officers, I know you are very hard working, and you can only do so much in terms of what your system may allow you to do.
But you can do so much more also.
Yeah, because you can do patrols. And I remember when we had two foreigners who were put in charge of the TTPS, there was a big backlash. But these two individuals, what they were encouraging and what they would have set up is why we have beds and dorms in a police station, why people having big cook and big line. You have to be out on the street.
Beat and patrol. Beat and patrol is a microstructure of policing, coming from the police service myself.
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yes, I am. Somebody whispered that to me yesterday.
So that's the microstructure of policing, and we really have to get back to that. And there are serious fixes to be had or to be done with the law enforcement community, especially the police service. But the entire criminal justice system is something that we need to sit down and do a real review and reform of. Iva Archie has work to do with the dispensation of justice as the Chief Justice. There's significant work for Mr. Archie and his team to do. There is no way we can justify matters taking 10 and 15 years to be completed, and decision to be had and justice to be dispensed in our criminal justice system. Some people say we don't have a justice system. What we have is a legal system because justice is not being had. And therefore we have to transform that from a legal system to a justice system. And that falls squarely in Iva Archie's domain. And there are fixes to be had with the prison system, how that operates and how we reform our prisoners. And there's also the need for the people to be mobilized and organized. And if you listen to the Chief Secretary, he's on that pathway where he's saying that the sustainability of safety and security and the promotion of that is really resident in how we mobilize our communities and our villages and to respond to the crime situation.
Yeah.
And his mantra is that wherever in this space you are, in your homes, in your workplace, in your places of worship, in your social groups,
Right.
you have to take that collective position that you are going to give up anyone, whether your daughter, your son, your friend, because who is in possession of an illegal firearm to law enforcement. If we are not prepared to do that, then we have to be prepared to live with gun violence. We have to be prepared
Right.
for a normalization or normalizing of gun violence, right? Because there is no other way to win this battle but to deploy collective action.
Right.
Right?
Do you think, because we're looking at changing mindsets, do you think one of the places that we can start this would be within our schools? And I know we have counselors and, there are programs, but in terms of sustaining programs, making it consistent and not a one-off kind of have a lecture, talk to the kids, but setting up systems even within our schools to have this type of ongoing discussion. So you're kind of training their mind in a particular way. Because right now, I mean, to be a bad boy, bad girl, like, big thing.
So one of the quickest and fastest way to get this done and to create the kind of social transformation and change in the community and to get the kind of responses that are necessary from the people is to really start working with organized groups like schools, churches, youth groups, village council, the football team, the fishermen who have the fishing organization. So you get massive people, because what we want to do, and let us be real, right? We don't expect to get a mass movement in everything, but what we have to do the things that will create the tipping point, a core social movement enough to transform the situation, and then the other persons will come on board.
That's right.
So you have to target the thing very, very strategically and understand that you have to really create the social pathways in the community for these things to happen. We have to create new social institution and new social arrangement in the community that will empower people for them to feel safe, to take the necessary collective action that is required to promote and protect the kind of safety that we are accustomed to. If we sit down and do nothing, then we have to be prepared to take the consequences of doing nothing. And the consequences of doing nothing and not participating or being inactive in terms of a response to what is happening in our society is to live with gun violence and murders.
And
it's just not a healthy option. That is not a healthy option.
Definitely
It is not an option at all.
Yeah.
This is something that the Chief Secretary is very dear to, and I think he will lead the transformation. And I think as the leader of Tobago, I think the mantle fall at his feet to really come forward and create this new social construct as to how we are going to respond to gun violence. We are having the conversation, and I'm certain within the 48 hours he's going to have a serious conversation with Tobagonians as to how we are going to treat with this issue going forward.
Right, but it really, sometimes we think we have no power, but we do have power as a people, and it's I'm thinking of how the villages are, and I want to make reference to Charlottesville. Anybody from Charlottesville viewing this morning, fabulous Friday to you. And I always use Charlottesville as an example, because even now when you start to descend and you go into Charlottesville and people aren't familiar with you, people start asking questions. You are flagged. So they would know if you're just a visitor passing through. They would know if you're somebody's cousin, where you're staying, how long you're staying, even before you settle in. And I think we have to come back somewhat to that. Not that you're in people's business, but you have to know who is around. Why are they there? And if you realize they're up to no good, then you need to, get the attention of the authorities. And if the bad elements know that they are not welcome, but when you go there, somebody else will come and pick you up, then they would have nowhere to be.
Well, that has been, that was part of our social construct many years ago, even in Belgrade where I grew up.
Yeah.
Once you come into that village and you are not linked to a family in that village, then you are kept under surveillance.
Right.
And I'm telling you, Tobagonians are the best set of macos in the world. And if we should deploy that capability
Yeah.
for this use against crime,
yes.
I am certain by the end of the year, we'll get rid of all the guns and all the potential acts of violence in Tobago, because we have 65 to 70,000 Tobagonians, all of who are law enforcement cameras looking across the island.
Yes.
There cannot be a move in Tobago that we are not aware of, but we just have to create that social platform, that social safety net, that we know that when we respond in that way, we are protected. Because you see, the mantra here is that when you are safe, I am safe.
Yeah, definitely.
And that has to be our tagline in Tobago. So your safety is intrinsically linked to my safety.
Yeah.
So that's the only way the entire island is going to be safe.
Right.
And therefore we have to create the conversation. We have to create the awareness, and we have to empower our communities. We have to empower individuals to take action. Right? I think that we have resigned, or we have ceded our own social control responsibility in this situation, and try to bank everything on the police. The police have plenty fixes to be done. We know that there are relationship issues, there are trust issues and all of that. But working with the police over time, those things can be mended. Those things can be fixed, and we can have a real thriving social construct Tobago where we can walk freely. We can go back to those days where we can remove the burglar proofing from our homes.
You know, quite common,
and stop living in prisons. This is the capitalist paradise. This is the greatest little island on the planet. And therefore, those are some of the defining social principles that we want to ensure that we enjoy here as a people.
Right. And at this point, we'll take a break, viewers, and when we return, we will shift our conversation a bit. So make sure you stay tuned.